Self-care almost becomes like a magic trick, especially if you do things such as meditation, but it's possible other tools work as well. And it's super, super helpful, especially if you have NVLD, because in my experience, NVLD is really weird. Meaning, in my personal experience, NVLD can give you a really, really weird perspective. For example, if things become fluid, it can be really difficult to navigate them, even though other people seem to navigate fluid situations, at least some of the time, with ease. I guess another example can be um, if you struggle with rigid thinking at times, which can be a side effect, for lack of a better word, of NVLD, it can be tough because sometimes you have to find the gray area. Everything's not as it seems, unfortunately, which can be baffling when you're dealing with NVLD and you have this weird perspective. Obviously, another element in terms of anxiety with NVLD can be that people don't understand your learning disability. For example, some people think people with NVLD can't speak, so that can be tough as well. But I'm just mentioning it just because I feel like it ties into self-care, not even only just NVLD, but other various diagnoses, whether they're mental health, learning disability, what have you, have elements of them that can unfortunately cause anxiety. And so part of the reason I'm doing this is to share, I've dealt with anxiety at times, like when I was younger and even now, in terms of people not always understanding NVLD and or some of my other challenges. And so I'm sharing this in hopes of inspiring other people to do the same. Another thing in terms of, I guess, people accomplishing things, or hopefully accomplishing things, the NFL draft is tonight. There are a bunch of different things that could happen, including what the Jacksonville Jaguars can do with the number one draft pick. They may have already announced it, but I don't know off the top of my head. I know they drafted Trevor Lawrence with the number one overall draft pick last year. However, we don't know what they're going to do this year, and evidently they struggled tremendously last year. Or unfortunately, they struggled tremendously last year. Um, the Seattle Seahawks have like the ninth overall pick or so. I don't think they should draft a quarterback, but obviously I'm not in the front office or even in their war room or whatever they call it, so I don't have the opportunity to decide. But I don't think they should draft a quarterback in their first round. I think the Seattle Seahawks should draft a wide receiver. But the NFL draft is very interesting. Another interesting thing in terms of things that are going on that I feel like I could talk about on my podcast are is that Tesla apparently isn't the first company to do a semi truck, even though they've been talking about it. I don't know if their competitor or one of their competitors is going to be able to actually successfully do it or not, but it sounds like they're supposedly making more progress based on what I read online. So it's going to be interesting to see if that company is able to actually make a difference or not within the semi truck world. It's also going to be interesting to watch as things continue to evolve, which in some ways it will be good because if everything's automatic, maybe it'll simplify things in some ways in terms of mental health and potentially feeling overwhelming at times and so forth. And in terms of, it'll make it more efficient. So in some ways it's like perfect for someone with NVLD and or some other challenges, or maybe you want things more simplified. Or just life in general, things will be more simplified. But it's going to be interesting to watch trains, cars, planes, etc. become more and more automated in theory over time. So that's going to be another interesting topic, or another interesting trend rather to watch. Also in terms of business and sports, I'm very interested in branding. And again, this ties into this concept that the world is this, or can be this crazy, overwhelming mess. Not that it always is, but that things can be moving really fast and so forth. And so that's another interesting topic, is branding, not only just getting noticed, but one of the things I've noticed in terms of branding is with NVLD, because not a lot of people know about it, there's not really a quote unquote brand. I'm aware it's a learning disability, not like a product, but I still think it's really interesting, or that aspect of it is really interesting. So one of the things I'm working on is trying to raise awareness about NVLD indirectly. For example, I'll talk about other stuff like sports or mental health, and obviously mental health is arguably at least somewhat related to NVLD, but still, I'll try and talk about other stuff instead of only focusing on NVLD, because understandably not everyone only wants to hear about NVLD in terms of like education, from like an educational perspective. So by presenting it in a different way, or in other words, presenting it indirectly, for example, if you see a soda beverage at a store, maybe it's advertising a video game, even though it's a quote-unquote soda product, not a video game product. So in some ways, I'm attempting to do that, the same thing, whether it's with this podcast or potentially other content as well. I'm working on some blogging stuff hopefully as well. So hopefully I can help make a difference with that in terms of helping raise awareness about NVLD indirectly.